3 feet. That is all that stood between one man and a fortune that would have changed his family's life forever. But he walked away. And what happened next is a lesson that still haunts anyone who has ever thought about giving up. Let me tell you this story. Many years ago, during the great gold and diamond rush, when ordinary men left everything behind chasing the dream of striking it rich underground, there lived a man named Samuel Harden. Samuel was a farmer from a small, wind-beaten town where the soil had turned dry and the harvests had failed 3 seasons in a row. His hands were cracked from years of working land. It gave him nothing in return. His wife, Ilara, mended the same clothes over and over. His 2 children slept on a mattress stuffed with straw. But Samuel had fire in his eyes. He had heard stories of men who went into the mountains with nothing but a pickaxe and came out holding diamonds the size of walnuts. Stories of farmers like him who became wealthy overnight. And one evening, sitting at his empty dinner table, Samuel made a decision. He sold his farm, every last acre. He took every coin he had saved and bought mining equipment, a heavy drill, shovels, carts, and enough supplies to last months underground. His neighbors called him a fool. His own brother told him he was chasing a fantasy. But Samuel looked at his children's bare feet and said quietly, "I would rather fail reaching for something than succeed at standing still." The night before he left, Ilara stood in the doorway watching him pack. She did not try to stop him. She simply placed her hand on his chest and whispered, "Come back to us. Not rich, just come back." Samuel held her hand against his heart and made a promise he believed he could keep. And with that, he left for the mountains. The first weeks were brutal. Samuel descended into a dark, narrow mine shaft every morning before sunrise. The air underground was thick and hot. Dust filled his lungs with every swing of his pickaxe. His shoulders burned. His back screamed. Blisters formed on his palms, broke open, and formed again until his hands looked like raw meat wrapped around a wooden handle. But he kept digging. Every night, he would crawl out of that hole, covered in dirt and sweat, and sit alone under the stars. He would write letters to Ilara that he could not afford to send. In those letters, he always wrote the same thing. "I am close, I can feel it." But weeks turned into months, and months brought nothing. No diamonds, no gold, not even a trace of crystal in the rock. Other miners around him were striking veins of ore. He could hear their celebrations echoing through the tunnels. He could see them loading carts with glittering stone, while his own cart sat empty day after day after day. The money began to run out. His supplies thinned. His drill bits dulled and cracked. He could not afford new ones. Doubt crept in like water through cracked stone. At night, he stopped writing letters. He stopped looking at the stars. He would just sit in silence, staring at his bleeding hands, wondering if his brother had been right all along. "What am I doing here?" he whispered to himself one night. "I have given everything, and the mountain has given me nothing." The worst part was not the exhaustion. It was not the hunger. It was the silence of the rock. Day after day, the same dull, gray, lifeless stone staring back at him, as if the mountain itself was saying, "There is nothing here for you." One morning, Samuel woke up and could not lift his arms. His body had given out. His spirit had cracked long before. He stood at the entrance of his mine shaft and looked down into the darkness one final time. He thought of his children. He thought of the farm he had sold. He thought of Ilara's hand on his chest and her quiet words, "Come back to us." He had promised to come back, but not like this, not empty, not broken. And then he thought, some dreams are just that, dreams. Samuel laid down his pickaxe. He sold his mining equipment, the drill, the carts, the shovels, to a local trader for a fraction of what he had paid. Just enough money for a train ticket home. He walked away from that mine shaft with his head down, his pockets empty, and his heart heavier than any stone he had ever carried out of that mountain. He went home to face his family with nothing. The trader who bought Samuel's equipment was a man named Colton Webb. Colton was not a dreamer. He was not brave. He had never swung a pickaxe in his life. His fingernails were clean and his boots were polished. He made his living buying broken men's tools at a discount and selling them at full price. But Colton was shrewd, and he believed in one thing Samuel never thought to use: expert advice. Before resuming the dig, Colton hired a mining engineer, a geologist who understood the language of rock formations. The engineer descended into Samuel's mine shaft with a lantern and a notebook. He studied the walls carefully. He examined the angle of the dig, the color shifts in the stone, the faint mineral traces that Samuel's exhausted eyes had never noticed. Then the engineer climbed out, dusted off his hands, and said 6 words that would become the most painful sentence in this entire story. Resume digging. You are almost there. Colton's hired men picked up where Samuel had stopped. They swung their pickaxes into the same dull, gray rock that had mocked Samuel for months. 3 feet. That is how far they dug. 3 feet beyond the exact spot where Samuel had laid down his pickaxe, the rock split open and revealed a vein of diamonds so rich, so vast that it became one of the most valuable strikes in the entire region. 3 feet, 36 inches. The distance from a man's hand to his elbow. That was all that had stood between Samuel Harden and everything he had ever dreamed of. And Colton Webb, a man who had never bled for those diamonds, never lost sleep over them, never felt the mountain's silence crushing his spirit, walked away wealthy. Not because he was stronger than Samuel, but because he asked one question Samuel never did: what am I not seeing? Now, most people hear this story and think it is about diamonds. It is not. It is about the 3 feet that exist in every single person's life. Think about it. How many people start a business and quit right before it was about to succeed? How many students abandon a dream 1 semester before graduation? How many people walk away from a relationship right before the breakthrough that would have saved it? The diamonds were never the point. The point is this: the moment you feel most like giving up is almost always the moment you are closest to breaking through. Samuel was not a fool for digging. He was not weak for struggling. His only mistake was that he made his decision based on what he could see: dull, gray, lifeless rock, instead of what he could not yet see. And here is what makes this story cut even deeper. Samuel did not fail because he lacked strength. That man dug through solid rock for months with bleeding hands. He had more strength than most people will ever know. He did not fail because he lacked courage. He sold everything he had and walked into the unknown. That takes more bravery than most people will ever show. Samuel failed because he lacked one thing: the right knowledge at the right time. He never consulted an expert. He never asked someone who understood what the rock was telling him. He relied only on his own eyes, his own pain, and his own exhaustion to make the most important decision of his life. And tired eyes make terrible judges of distance. So tonight, before you lay down your pickaxe, ask yourself one question: what if you are only 3 feet away? You do not need to dig faster. You do not need to dig alone. Sometimes you just need someone who can see what the rock is hiding. Because the tragedy of Samuel Harden was never that he could not find diamonds. The tragedy is that the diamonds were already there, waiting for him, just 3 feet away. Do not quit on your 3 feet.